17th window in the 2020 TooFatLardies Advent calendar. Only a week to go until just about the big day. But before you switch on another one of those slightly cheesy Christmas films, I'm just going to ask, Richard, what's your favourite Wargames army that you own? And tell us about why. What makes that Wargames army so special to you? Maybe a little bit about which battles you fought with it. What glorious triumphs. What ignoble defeats. Hurrah! Tell us all about it, Rich.
Picking a favourite army is not easy. And I guess there are different reasons you could pick it. It could be a nice, beautiful army, really nicely painted. It could be an army that allowed you to fight a campaign that you were really interested in. But I think if I had to nail it down and put my finger on any one army, it would be my Confederate army for the ACW with sharp practice. Enduring characters in there that developed. We had two lieutenants, both really nice figures. Perry Miniatures Metals. Justice T. Lovetrain III was my idea of a fun and character and possibly the most implausible name for a Confederate officer ever. He was the ultimate cavalier rebel type with all the braid and the feather in the hat. He really would have looked very much at home as much in the English Civil War or the American Civil War with those high cavalry boots. The other lieutenant, his sidekick, was Ethor Pickens. He was a rural farm boy, much plainer in his dress, from somewhere out in the sticks, obviously. And in a very early game, it turned out that he had a rather unhealthy romantic interest, unfortunately, in chickens. So I took a Perry figure that was waving a hat, and his right arm up to like 11 o'clock if it was a clock face, waving a hat, and I trimmed the hat away and drilled through the hand and put a bent paper clip through it, which I then sort of shaped, and then on top of that basis I used green stuff and sculpted a chicken, so this guy was triumphantly waving a captured chicken in the air. The captain who controlled the force should probably not be mentioned actually in polite company. He was called Jebediah Buttplug. I sculpted a huge biblical sort of ZZ Top beard on his character figure, and he was a huge sort of cartoon character of a man, and an absolute bullet magnet. Barely a game would go by when he wasn't wounded in some way. But he was incredibly brave. He kept going. He was always at the head of his men in the attack. Great character. And then finally we had Sergeant Red O'Malley, which was the only guy who didn't have a silly name. He was an Irishman, and his backstory was that he was a former British Army professional soldier. I seem to think that he deserted while stationed in Canada, but somehow he was always at the key point in every action, saving the day. A real absolute hero, really good guy. And we played a fabulous campaign set in the Shenandoah Valley. We ran a sort of parallel campaign to Stonewall Jackson's campaign. Due to the captain and the fact it was set in a valley, the whole thing was unfortunately named Butt Plug Up the Pass. I don't need to add any comment to that, but anyway, the important thing was our heroes were always in outpost duties that were mirroring the main actions that Jackson was fighting, and we kept the narrative really just so they were on the side of that campaign, but still you had all that historical background. If Jackson was suffering a reverse, they would be maybe forming a rear guard. If Jackson was advancing forward, maybe they would be collecting up fodder or food from the farms that they were passing. And we had loads of other characters get involved. We had a Pinkerton agent. In fact, I think it was Pinkerton himself. We had a beautiful Confederate spy. She was being hunted down by Union cavalry at some point. All sorts of fun. And really my attachment to the army is not based on a huge love of the figures. In fact, most of them are the first release Perry plastic ACW, although the leaders are all metal, which I've commented on before in terms of the way I think about my figures. But really the focus for me was on the fabulous fun we had with them and the stories that kept us entranced for weeks and months on end. And for me, it's that fun with friends, with your wargaming clubmates, that's far more important than winning and losing. And those small games of 60 or so figures a side, often less, had far more of the personal heroism and daring do that I want from my games than any big battle refight that I've ever been involved in. For me, and it's a personal thing, that is just the sweet spot, that size game. So yeah, Confederate Army in the Shenandoah Valley in 1861, 1862, early Civil War, for me.
Method. Remember, lard is for life and not just for Christmas.